All right, guys. So here's section 316, quadratic functions. This is one of those topics that you guys seen in algebra 2. Right? We spent probably, I would say, probably about 8 to 10 weeks on this stuff with parabolas. All right. So our first thing we want to look at is use the table. All right. So they're giving us this table here. All right. They're giving us this table right there. We want to look at that table and identify the zeros. All right. And when they refer to the zeros, what they're talking about is when x is equal to 0. Excuse me. When y is equal to 0. I'm sorry, I'm messing you guys up. All right. When they talk about the zeros, it's when y is equal to 0. All right. So all we're going to look for is on this thing when they say identify the zeros. All right. I'll get to the other part in a second. So when they say identify the zeros, is where do you see y equals 0? Well, I see y equals 0 there, and I see y equals 0 right there. So when they tell us to identify the zeros, all you're writing down is what is the x-coordinate. So the x-coordinate is -2 and +4. That's all they want you to do. Now, when they tell you to write the x-intercepts, well, when y is equal to 0, that is an x-intercept. All right, that is the x-intercept. So the x-intercepts, now you're just writing them as an ordered pair. So you're going to say -2, 0, and then +4, 0. All right, that's all you're doing. And let me erase some of this mess here. All right, now they want us to talk about the y-intercept. All right, when the y-intercept, when you're looking at that, a y-intercept is when x equals 0. All right, so that's the y-intercept. So now we're going to look on this table and figure out where's x equal to 0. Where's x equal to 0 right there. All right, in this case, there's only one. So when we write this thing down, you're writing it as an ordered pair. Right, so it's just going to be 0, -8. Right. So just remember x-intercepts. When you're looking for the x-intercepts, y is equal to 0. All right, that's what you need to remember. All right, so you need to remember that. I don't know, maybe I should write it out in words. Y is equal to 0. Sorry, that looks really, really sloppy, but you guys get the idea. And then for the y-intercepts, the x-coordinate. Right, maybe I should have wrote that there. The y-coordinate. All right, so it's the x-coordinate that equals 0. All right, so we all good here? Yes? All right, so we move down. You'll see that they want us to graph the table and label the zeros. All right, let's start labeling. All right, let's start plotting these points. Do you guys remember how to plot? I hope everybody remembers how to plot. All right, so when we start plotting, we always start at the origin. We're always starting at the origin. All right, but don't put a circle around it. That aggravates the crap out of me. So we always start at the origin. You're going to go left or right first. So you're going to go to -3, and then you're going to go up or down. So to 7. The next point, -2, 0. Well, there was our 0 because the y coordinate is 0. And then -1, -5, 0, -8, 1, -9, all right, and 2, -8, 3, -5, 4, 0, and then 5 all the way up to 7. All right, you guys can do a way better job. I told you guys it sucks drawing on this thing. All right, so there is, holy cow, that's horrible. There is our graph. All right, there is our graph there. So when we graph this thing, all right, when we graphed this thing, they wanted us to label the zeros. Let me pick a different color. Give me a second, guys. Here, all right. No, that's too close to red. Let's just do green. What the hell? All right. So they wanted us to label the zeros. All right. So there's 1 0, which is -2 0. There's the other 0 that I totally missed. All right. There's the other 0, which is 4 0. Right? And they wanted us to label the y-intercept. Well, where does it cross the y-axis? It's crossing the y-axis right there. So here's our y-intercept, which is 0, -8. All right? So now, what do you notice? So part B, all right? So I'm looking at part B here. All right, looking at part B. I want to cooperate. What do you notice about the smallest function value? All right, that smallest function value. The smallest function value. When they say that, all that nonsense just means is what's the lowest point on the graph? Right? What is the lowest point on the graph here? This point right there. That's the lowest point. Right? That's the lowest point right in the, and it's right in the middle of the zeros. Right? If you look at this thing, so we call this thing the vertex. Right? So that thing's called the vertex. What do you notice about the vertex? All right. So if I scroll up a little bit here, let me pick a different color again, just so it looks a little bit different. All right. What do you notice about the vertex? If I draw a vertical line through the vertex, right? I don't know if that comes up nice or not, but hopefully you guys can see it. You'll notice that the vertex, that vertical line, it's right in the middle. It's right in the middle of the zeros. So you'll notice it's 1, 2, 3 spaces that way, 1, 2, 3 spaces that way. It's right in the middle of the vertex. All right. So what do you notice about that smallest function value? All right. Again, vertex. It's right in the middle. Right in the middle of the zeros. All right. It's right in the middle of the zeros. All right. So hopefully everybody's good there. All right. Let's talk about this little chart here. All right. So quadratic function, which we have just been dealing with, and quadratic function, when you're looking at it, it's just when, oh, that's horrible. Let me pick a different color. All right. What can I pick? Yeah, let's pick that. See what it looks like. All right. So when they're talking about a quadratic function, they just mean when x is squared. Okay. That's all that means. Quadratic function, x is squared. And here it is written in standard form. Okay. Standard form there. Our graph, this U-shaped graph here. This U-shaped graph here, they call it a parabola, all right? That thing's called a parabola. It's not a happy face, sad face, as I've heard some people call it. It's a parabola. And the parabola, it turns right at that vertex, all right? Since the vertex is right in the middle, we refer to the vertex as the line of symmetry, all right? The line of symmetry goes right through the vertex. And you'll notice later on, once we start graphing these things, the line of symmetry helps out a whole lot. And let me try to keep this thing clean a little bit and then mark it all up. All right. Now, they give us this example here. All right. They give us that example. And when you look at it, there is no zeros. When you look at the graph, there's no zeros. Why not? Because it's not crossing the x-axis. There's no zeros because this parabola does not cross the x-axis. But there is a y-intercept. All right, there is a y-intercept. And that y-intercept is 0, 3. All right? So it does have a y-intercept. The graph opens up. All right, since this graph opens up, I know this graph opens up because, let me erase a lot of this mess. I know this graph opens up because A right here is 1, which is positive. All right. Since A is positive, I know this graph is going to open up. All right. I don't know what else I can tell you about that. Let's just keep going. All right. To find the vertex. All right. So here we're going to do some calculating now. All right. To find the vertex, first off, this function has to be in standard form. So it has to have y equals. Y has to be by itself. All right. You notice y is by itself. I guess I can go back to the yellow here. All right. Y has to be by itself. And then they want you to identify A, B, and C. All right. A is always the number in front of x squared. B is always the number in front of x. And then C is always the number that's by itself. All right. It's always going to be like that. But now if there's one of these terms are missing, right? If one of those terms is missing, if one of those are missing, then we know that it has to be 0. So, all right. So if B or C is missing, if one of those terms is missing, then we just say that B equals 0 or C equals 0. Okay. All right. So now to find the x coordinate of the vertex, you have to know this formula right there. You have to know it. X equals negative B over 2A. All right. And I'll get into this stuff. I'll get into this stuff as we start to go through the problems. All right. I don't want to bore everybody. All right. So they want us to find the vertex. All right. And I'm not really sure what that's about. I'm just gonna leave that alone. Not sure what that's about here. But they want us to find the vertex. Well, there's A, there's B. Well, B happens to be negative. All right, don't screw up and forget that negative. And then C, because there's no C, C is equal to 0. Okay, so to find the x coordinate of the vertex, all right, to find that x coordinate of the vertex, we're going to use the formula. X is equal to negative B over 2A. All right, plug everything in that you know. B is negative 12. Well, I have this negative right here. I have to remember that negative. All right, don't screw that up. And then B happens to be negative 12 all over 2 times whatever A is. A is 3. All right. Now, of course, I'm going to run out of room here. X is equal to, these two negatives give me a positive, so I end up with 12 over 6, which ends up giving me 2. All right. Now to find the y coordinate of the vertex. Now I'm going to write over that crap. I have no idea what that's there for. All right. So the y coordinate of the vertex. We're going to rewrite the formula, the equation. I'm sorry. We're going to rewrite that equation that they gave us. And you're going to take whatever they gave us. I mean, whatever we calculated, we're going to plug it in for x. All right. We're going to plug it in. And when you plug it in, use parentheses. Use parentheses. I cannot emphasize that enough. All right. So you grab your calculator, all right, or do some mental math, and you end up with negative 12. So the coordinates of our vertex are 2, negative 12. And they wanted us to figure out if the vertex was a maximum or if it was a minimum. Well, to figure that out, For the vertex to be a maximum, A has to be greater than 0. All right? I'm sorry. I got that backwards. Oh my goodness, I'm screwing everybody up here. All right? So for the vertex to be a maximum, A has to be less than 0. So A is going to be negative. All right? It's going to be a negative number. For the vertex to be a minimum, A is going to be greater than 0. All right? Or A is going to be a positive number. Well, we look at our case, A is 3. All right? So it's going to be that. So we end up with a minimum. All right? All right, over here. Again, there's A, there's B, there's C. A is negative 1. All right, don't forget that. There's a 1 sitting there. People in math are lazy asses. All right, they don't write it. It's understood to be a 1. So the x coordinate of the vertex, x is equal to negative B. Well, B is 6 all over 2 times A is negative 1. So we end up with negative 6 over negative 2 gives me 3. Now the y coordinate of the vertex. Sorry, it's hard to write on this thing, and especially I got the graph thing with this T-chart thing in the way here. All right. Again, all we're going to do is plug in. We're plugging in our x coordinate. So I have, and let me erase this mess so you guys can see it. All right. Let me put the negative ones back there again. So remember we said when we're substituting, you're using parentheses. Don't screw this up. So A was negative 1. Now I'm replacing x with 3. So 3 squared plus 6 times 3 again, minus 8. All right? You'll notice all I'm doing is I'm going through and I'm replacing x. I'm replacing x with our coordinate. All right. Grab your calculators. You'll end up figuring out y is equal to 1. So our vertex is 3, 1. Since A is negative, all right, A was negative 1. You guys agree? A was negative 1. Since A is negative, the vertex is going to be a maximum. All right. And at any point, if you want, you could just pause this video, do it yourself, fast forward so you don't got to listen to me, and check your answers, okay? So I'll do this one quicker. All right, B is negative 16. So I have a negative 16. All right, remember this negative is part of the formula. Don't forget it. Over 2 times A is 1. So x is equal to 16 over 2, x equals 8. And now for the y coordinate, y equals substituting. So I'm using parentheses. Minus 16 times 8 plus 55. Grab your calculators. We end up with y is equal to negative 9. All right? So we end up with our vertex of 8, negative 9. All right, so the vertex here, because A is positive, since A is positive, all right, it's a positive number. Remember, A is 1. A is 1. It's a positive number. So this is going to be a minimum. All right, last one here. Let's just work through this quick. All right, so I end up with negative 4 over 2 times negative 2. X gives me 1. The y coordinate, again, using parentheses to substitute. I wish that stupid thing was not there. All right, plugging in with your calculator. All right, A is positive. So again, all right, I'm sorry, A is negative in this case. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong problem here. All right, A is negative. So we're going to end up with a maximum. All right, so remember way back over here when I said we'll get to this part? All right, well, we got to it. We got to it. Find the x-coordinate of the vertex of the parabola if the x-intercepts, or the zeros, all right? So they're giving us the zeros. Now, if we look back up here at this, they talk about finding the average. Well, remember when you find the average, you're just adding two things together, all right? So finding the average of the zeros, so you're going to add you're going to add the coordinates, and you're going to divide by 2. All right, that's all we're going to do here. All right, not a big deal. So the x-coordinate of the vertex, all right, the x-coordinate of the vertex, we end up with x is equal to, because they gave us the zeros, all right, you'll notice there's 0, there's 0. They gave us the zeros. Add the x-coordinates together and divide by 2. So we end up with x is equal to -4/2. X is equal to -2. If you're going to use your calculator, please put this in correctly, all right? On your calculator, use parentheses, because your calculator's stupid, all right? You guys have heard me say this plenty of times. Your calculator's stupid. You know that you're going to do those two first. You know you're going to do -6 plus 2 first. So on the calculator, you have to tell that dumb thing to do -6 plus 2 first. So put them in parentheses before you hit your division symbol, all right? Because if you don't, what it's going to do, all right? Let me teach you guys real quick what your dumbass calculator is going to do. If you don't use parentheses, your calculator is going to do this first, all right? It's going to do that first. Think for your calculator. All right, let me erase that. Oh, erase. Come on, damn it. Erase. All right, erase that. Make sure that you know that you're using parentheses. Use parentheses. Those are your friends. So find the x-coordinate of the vertex. X-coordinate of our vertex is -2.